Hey folks, I'm Jack Fossett and welcome to Guitar Rigs. Today we are going to show you how you can get some cool blues tones with an Epiphone Sheraton II and a Fender Blues Jr. So this is a great budget blues rig, and I say budget, kind of with respect to people who this is not budget for, because this is still not, certainly not inexpensive, but comparatively to a lot of rigs out there, this is something much more reasonable as far as getting, especially if you're getting used, You can get the two of these used for well under $1,000. Not new, but used, you certainly can. Both of these were used and everything when I got them, and I think it can get a really cool blues tone, but not quite the way you would expect to dial it in. So I wanted to share with you one way that you can get a really cool blues tone with this rig. So first of all, with the guitar, now this is an Epiphone Sheraton II. This is one that was made in China. I'm not sure the exact year, but it's one of the more recent ones. It's not a Sheraton II Pro. It does not have the push-pull pots, but it was not made in the Peerless factory in Korea, so somewhere in the middle there. It's a great guitar. It's got a great neck. I've done a whole review of this guitar if you want to check that out. Now, what I have is mostly playing on the neck pickup, but added a little bit in the bridge there in the end, as you heard. And I have the volumes opened up, and I did have the tone backed off just a hair. Not much, but just enough to cut a little bit of that top end off. Now, in the amp, and I talk about this in more detail in my full review of this amp. I have a whole tone tips video of this amp. Check it out if you want to check it out for kind of some more detailed information. But basically, you have a master volume and a volume. The volume is, think of it like volume and gain, basically. Okay, right? So volume is like your gain, master volume is like your volume. So I have the volume opened all the way up on this, and the master volume is up at about, the master volume's up so that, not so that the power tubes are distorting, but that the power tubes are warming up a bit. And that can be varied depending on how loud you need it to be. The important thing with getting a good blues tone, I've found, is to keep the fat switch disengaged. Now, if you really want a heavy blues tone, getting more into like modern blues, like, thinking like Joe Bonamassa and Gary Moore, first of all, this amp doesn't get into crazy distortion territory, but that fat switch could be more of your friend there. But if you want kind of a cool, more classic blues tone, I would keep the fat switch disengaged for this. Now, this is a really, really bright amp with some unpleasant overtones, I found. So, believe it or not, the treble is all the way off and the bass is all the way up. And if you listen, it is not lacking for brightness, and it is not overly muddy either. So I know that you kind of go, wow, my guess would be that you didn't expect that. But yeah, the bass is all the way up, the treble is all the way off, and then the mids are only up at around 5. And that mid-range, I don't like to push it too much because, again, the mid-range and the treble, they can get some unpleasant frequencies, particularly when you use the reverb, because the reverb is really bright and long, and those frequencies kind of get bounced around, and it almost sort of like they reflect the wrong frequencies, and it can kind of sound a little too shimmering in a very ear-fatiguing way. So I don't have a ton of reverb going, and again, that's the settings, and I just found that with this guitar, that's where I was getting the best blues tone that I liked. Now, this is not crazy old, but this is an older Blues Junior. It's an NOS Tweed. It has the Jensen speaker in it. This is not one of the newer circuits where they fixed some of the EQ issues, to my understanding. But this is a good representation of a Blues Junior. There's a lot of Blues Juniors out there that are going to sound, similar to this one. And I would venture to say, not to diminish what Fender did with the circuit to make the new ones better, but I think a Blues Junior is a Blues Junior. So with the exception of a little bit on, maybe some of the EQ knobs, as far as the character of the tone, it's mostly going to be in the same kind of realm. So that's what I would say about if you're looking for a blues tone out of this amp, particularly with a guitar like this. I think be prepared to, play with the EQ in ways that you wouldn't expect to play with it. Really push the EQ, turn the bass all the way up and the treble all the way off and see how you like it. A lot of people would never think to do that because it's kind of an unorthodox EQ setting, right? I mean, the general rule with a tube amp is set all the EQs at noon and then adjust to taste. You wouldn't really, most people tend to stay in kind of a reasonably tethered to that knobs at noon thing, but you can get some really cool tones if you just let that go and just, use your ears instead of your expectations. That's what I would say about this amp. and this guitar. And this is a great guitar. It's a great guitar, which is surprisingly bright for what it is. And so, of course, with this amp, then, pairing it up like a lot of you probably are, just be prepared to do what you need to do to tame that treble. Especially when you get up to gig volume. If you're playing in a band and you're going out and playing in front of an audience, and whether it's a band and you're getting hired to do a gig, or even just a band practice, or going to a blues jam or something, your job is to be a good musician, and part of being a good musician is knowing how to get the best tone out of your instruments. I can't tell you how many, if it's a beautiful performance but the tone is terrible, that takes away from it. So be ready to use your ears, and just remember, when you get these to really opened up volumes, everything's accentuated a little bit. That's kind of how tube amps are. It's not like you turn the volume up, it's not like it just gets louder. So like if this is your treble and this is your bass and your mids, it doesn't just go like this. It kind of goes like this. It all accentuates and it all, so like treble, if it was a little bit bright when it's at bedroom volume, it's like stab yourself in the temple with a pencil at stage volume. So be ready to quell that when you need to. Be ready to use your tone knobs on your guitar. Be ready to turn the treble back on the amp. And see where that gets you. I'm Jack Fossett. Thanks for tuning in to Guitar Rigs. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.